Live Stuff panel discussion. My name's Hannah Martin. I'm a health reporter here at Stuff, and today we're going to be discussing how to manage and deal with some of the emotional fallout that people will be feeling following Cyclone Gabrielle and a lot of the severe weather events we've had here recently in Aotearoa. So this morning I'm joined by Health New Zealand's Joe Chaplin, clinical psychologist Dr. Ainsley Kribsua, and a psychiatrist Dr. David Kadaya. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Just to start, this last sort of 4 weeks, month or so has been really difficult for a lot of people, and I imagine that there are people feeling a whole raft of emotions that perhaps are unfamiliar to them with these events. What are you hearing and seeing through the course of your own mahi at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, as expected, just a lot of people who are struggling with a range of understandable emotions, and I guess the key thing is just to kind of really say that that's normal and expected. So, you know, I mean, anxiety, you know, every time there's more rain forecast, it kind of evokes that, the grief and loss for people who've literally lost their homes and everything that they belong, really, or can't get back to them. Yeah, yeah, just a lot of uncertainty related to the general situation. When up here it's been the floods and for the west coast the impact of landslides and so on in those environments. But when obviously down the East Cape and East Coast, it's very much about the floods there and so on, and the impact that's had.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that in an emergency situation like this, it's normal to be feeling all sorts of emotions, and whatever you're feeling is okay and is normal and is appropriate. So for many people, like David said, that might be anxiety and stress. Other people might be feeling angry or sad. So a whole raft of emotions, and you might even feel all of those things kind of mixed together all at the same time or across the course of a day. And that is really normal. It is a normal human reaction to what we're all facing now. And that includes people who aren't immediately impacted themselves as well, because this is an event that I think has touched and impacted us all, and it is normal and natural that we're all going to be feeling a range of emotions.
Yeah, that's a good point, because we've heard exactly that. People in some of those communities who aren't affected feeling almost what they call survivor guilt, like I got off lightly, my neighbours, other people that are dear to me have had their lives devastated. And so even though they haven't been directly impacted, they are kind of very much feeling a sense of, you know, guilt as well as compassion for those around them. So yeah.
That definitely came out in a lot of the questions that we got from readers, actually. One, and this is sort of one for the floor, is for practical tips on bringing down what they've referred to as stress spikes in the moment. So when your heart starts racing and you feel like throwing up, how can you calm yourself down then and there?
There's lots of strategies that you can do in the moment, recognising that, you know, we're really close after the impact of these catastrophes. And so, you know, I just want to reinforce what David and both Joe have already said, that a lot of this palpitations and feeling anxious about what's next, what's around the corner, is very normal and actually widespread across our community. Lots of people who even weren't necessarily affected by the floods and the cyclone in recent months personally are still on edge and still feeling a lot of anxiety in relation to what next, and is it me next is the other possibility. I mean, there are lots of strategies, and you can Google, you can go online and find out about how to use techniques such as mindfulness, such as grounding, pushing into the moment, to reduce anxiety and to reduce those spikes. But I guess the other thing that's probably more important, as important if not more important, is being able to tell yourself that what's happening to me right now, and this spike in emotions and or heart palpitations, sweaty palms, is actually very normal, and I accept that this is a normal response to what's been going on around me.
And then remember to breathe, you know, just to actually in that moment use your breathing to just kind of calm your physiology down. And I mean, beyond that though, in terms of kind of preventing those spikes, there's some really key things people can do. I mean, it's really important, we're in media now, but actually not to kind of keep reviewing and revisiting all of the media coverage.
And the horror, because some of that coverage is all the bits that are horrible to look at and to think about that happening to somebody, but also the possibility that that could have been you.
Yep. Keeping to usual routines. Your loved ones, friends and whānau. I mean, the interesting thing about the act of being there for someone else is that it's actually as good for you as it is for that person. So, I mean, at times like that, people are more inclined than ever to not want to bother other people, but actually it is more important than ever to do it at a time like this, because just support is so protective in terms of well-being, and particularly at times like this.
I guess what I would say as well, particularly for the people who are in the midst of trying to sort out their home, their livelihood, all sorts of things, it might seem trivial to think about self-care at a time like that, but actually it's really important. So the things that David's talked about, those routines in your life, the small self-care things that you can do are really, really important to help preventing some of those spikes of anxiety. So taking some time in the day to just do something that gives you some pleasure, talking to people, connecting with people, making sure that you're eating well, sleeping well, all of those things are really protective and really important. There are other things. We've got 2 apps that are free to all New Zealanders that have a whole raft of information, techniques, tips, support. So Groove, Groov, is free on Android and Apple. You can download that, and then Headstrong, also free specifically for young people. So they're apps that people can use that can become part of their daily routine as well, to help them build in some of this practice. It's a bit like if you're training to get physically fit, actually building in some routine around looking after your mental well-being takes a bit of practice, but if you do the little things every day, makes a big difference over time.
Yeah, oh, that's really good to know. Thank you. Ainsley mentioned some people are thinking sort of what next and what if it's me next, and that was a big theme too. So we had a couple of questions come through. So one reader said, since the cyclone and the slips, I felt like I'm in danger, like a building could fall down at any moment. And another said that they're living in an affected region. How do I stop freaking out every time I hear the rain? What's your sort of advice for those sorts of thoughts?
First of all, just to recognise that the part of your brain that says to you, oh my gosh, it's raining, what does this mean? Is this going to be another tragedy? Is called the limbic system. It's the limbic system that might wake you up at night when you hear the rain to prepare. And actually that's the part of the brain, it's a really important, and it's at the centre of the brain, it's a really important part of the brain that is the centre that strives towards survival. And we're really, really close in time and proximity from a terrible, terrible natural disaster. And so I just want to recognise that your limbic system telling you, oh, be on guard, be prepared to survive, it's actually a really important part of what, you know, of the condition of being human. And so remember that across time, these sorts of triggers to stimuli that aren't usually that don't usually create a lot of fear, for most people will begin to dissipate over time. So you know, in the large majority of people who are being triggered, even subconsciously, well, subconsciously first and then potentially consciously when you think about what the rain might represent, for most people that will dissipate over time. For some people, that may not, and there may be a time at which there are, you know, you recognise that this is impacting your function and your ability to get on with life, and at that point you might need further supports.
Yeah, but that is an important point, because you're right, all of these emotions, including that kind of fear reaction, are normal, and then the vast majority of people will pass. The challenge after an event like this, as for example after the Christchurch earthquake, is that actually the ripple effects in your life go on and on and on. And so, you know, I mean, I'm not suggesting that it's easy and in a couple of days or a week you'll feel back to normal, but generally it will pass. The more you do the self-care stuff that Joe talked about, the more you'll be protected, and the faster that will happen.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I also think it is important, what Ainsley's saying, that if this is really impacting your functioning, then it is probably a sign to need to reach out for help. And I mean, probably the best starting places are either your GP practice or 1737, which has the text and phone availability of a counsellor. A lot of general practice in the affected areas now has this new integrated model where there is a mental health practitioner, a health coach on site, and also availability of community support services from the clinic. So
and those are free, unlike at times, unlike some GPs.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. They're fully funded. And Joe, am I right actually that the website saying which practices have the program has now gone live nationally?
Not quite, but it will be live in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So there'll be, yes, that's right. The other thing to point out for young people is Youthline as well. So young people can text 234 to get support from Youthline as well. So 1737, 234 are immediate for people who are connected to telecommunications, immediate access to support. And I think for me the key message is it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
There are things you can do yourself. The allsorts.org.nz gives you a whole lot of information about things that you can be doing yourself. But if you and you reach out to friends, but if you feel you need more support, then that's okay as well. And there are places, as David said, through your local general practice team, 1737, Youthline, there are a range of places that you can reach out and support and help's available. In the Hawke's Bay, that's been most impacted, where there's additional mental wellbeing support on the ground going in over the coming weeks, because we recognise that there'll be many people who want to reach out for that little bit of extra support. And I think, David, I mean, some of your experience up here in Muriwai has been that often for people they only need to see somebody once.
Yes,
this isn't necessarily something that's going to be forever. Some people might need longer periods of support, but for some people, reaching out early and just talking to somebody once about some strategies can in itself be enough. And I think you've had that experience, David.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, for those West Coast beach communities, Karekare, which is still cut off, so only can get stuff in and out by chopper, Piha and Muriwai. I mean, for the community leaders, their biggest burden was the kind of emotional care of their communities, and so that was their request. I mean, please take this off us. So we've had staff out of both our primary care teams and also the secondary mental health service in West Auckland going out to those communities. And you're right, I mean, people have been very grateful that there's someone come to them, and B, just one session has been enough just to give them what they need, some kind of reassurance, some support and some tools around how to manage through a really tough time.
Okay.
I really get a sense that our communities are becoming more confident to reach out to services. I certainly know that we had a number of mataora who are also practitioners who work in the mental wellbeing, hauora, wairuatanga space who were available at Te Matatini because there were a number of people from Heretaunga, from Te Tairawhiti and also Northland, Te Tai Tokero who were all attending Te Matatini with their supporters. And so some of those supporters and performers were able to access mataora at Te Matatini, and the anecdotal information that's come my way is that people were really grateful to have the opportunity to go and meet with a mataora, to wānanga or to have a conversation and to debrief about what they've seen in their communities, what they're hearing about in their communities and what it felt like to then be in this amazing context, knowing that at home things are still really difficult.
Okay.
And to come back to 1737 and Youthline, I mean, the thing to stress probably in terms of a message is that those services are there. At times like this, they get very busy.
Sure.
So for people just to be prepared, if there's a wait or if there's a delay to get a text back, it will come. Just to try and be patient, as difficult as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned before, David, that a time to reach out is when you notice things are impacting your daily functioning.
Yep.
I'm curious if you can explain a little more about that. We had a question from a woman who hasn't been in an affected area, but says that she's now having nightmares and is struggling with sleeplessness after reading about the devastation and loss. And as you mentioned, she's stopped reading, but finds that the thoughts aren't going away. They're sometimes there during the day, but mostly at night. Is there anything that she can do, or can you offer any suggestions as to what that looks like, and as we touched on, what actually impacted daily functioning means and looks like for people?
Sure. Look, I mean, it varies. So to start with that specific situation, I mean, I think that there's some things she can do for herself. So just try and keep some routine around bedtime to just kind of calm that nervous system down. Maybe use one of the many mindfulness apps that are out there, and I think that Health Navigator, the New Zealand website, has really vetted resources there, including mindfulness apps. So because the practice of mindfulness and slow breathing will again just further calm your nervous system, so that when you go to sleep, A, it's easy to get there, and B, it's less likely to get disturbed. If despite that, though, nightmares are continuing, then that's obviously, so generally that will pass, but if it's impacting function, so, you know, I can't concentrate, it's hard to get my usual daily things going, I'm losing motivation, you know, I'm getting irritable with other people in a way that's impacting relationships, then that's really the signal that this is a bit more, and the sooner you get help, actually, the better. So that would be my general advice.
Yeah, for me, when I get stressed, sleep is the first thing that goes, and sleep is the first thing that's impacted. So I personally use some of those apps, and there's a whole range of things, and you just have to kind of play with what works best for you. The one I use has got some sleep stories, and I quite like them, but for other people it's mindfulness or the breathing techniques. So there's a range of things. So I would just say, have a look at what's available, and sometimes you just think, oh no, that's not right for me, and then you find something that works. So just explore, find, as I said, there's Groove and Headstrong, but there's a range of other things, and just have a look at what works for you. But sleep is often the first thing that goes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I mean, I talk about mindfulness, but for sleep, it doesn't work for me. I use a thing called My Sleep Button, which you can Google. It's just a simple technique to kind of calm your thinking, because for me it's the thinking that's hard to switch off. So, you know, I think you're right. Kind of check a few, try a few, play around, find what works for you is really important.
That's awesome.
And I just wanted to put in a bid for those for whom mindfulness is not really overly helpful to me. I'm a bit more of an active relaxer. So I actually do what's otherwise called progressive muscle relaxation, which is clenching up different muscle groups and then releasing that, because actually the way that I can relax and begin to sink into sleep is by actually being a little bit active in my relaxing.
No, that's cool. That's good to know. Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about adults and how we've been feeling and how we can navigate resources, but we also received questions about tamariki and their experiences of these events. And so one was, how do I talk to my children about what's been going on, and how do children tend to experience these sorts of events based on what we know following, say, the Christchurch earthquakes, for example? Maybe Ainsley, that's for you.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, there's no one way that children respond to trauma or difficult things happening in their, either in their whānau or in their community, in their environment. But the really awesome thing about children, and particularly young children, is that even if they can't describe to us what's going on for them, we can often observe their distress or their stress in their behaviours. And so, children are really helpful at letting us know when they're not good. And that might look like not being able to go to sleep themselves. That might look like being more tearful. That might look like being more angry, or doing things that might not be destructive or overly emotional, but are just really different to what they usually do.
And also things like tummy aches really common as well.
Yeah, and demonstrating a form of pain. Children often manifest their stress and or their distress in physical symptomology. So that was that was responding to the how should we expect children to respond. The answer is there isn't one way. Children will respond differently, and children are really good at showing us that they're not doing well. And what was the next part of the question?
The other part of the question was, how do you talk to your children about what has been happening?
Really, really good and important question. And I'm going to start by saying that, different age bands of children are really different. For younger children, the types of questions that you might ask them need to be a little bit more direct. So yes, no type questions without giving them the answer, as opposed to children as they get towards, early teens or even, 9, 10, your questions can be more open in terms of, tell me how you feel about what's been going on for you. For a younger child, say a 4-year-old, you might be talking to them about what they've seen or what they've experienced, and you might want to say yourself as a parent or as a caregiver or even a teacher, what happened with the floods was really scary for me. What was that like for you? Was it scary for you too? And then shifting as the conversation progresses into more open questions. I guess that the important rule of thumb in communicating, particularly with our tamariki, sorry, this is for everybody, but I'm talking specifically about our tamariki, is that we need to listen to hear them, and we need to hear to understand. And there's nothing more important to our tamariki than feeling heard, feeling seen, and then being validated in what it is that they are experiencing and experiencing and telling you about. And when the person that is understanding them, hearing them, seeing them, and validating them is somebody that they care about and want to feel cared about from, that can make all the difference.
It's natural as parents to kind of want to protect your kids from stuff, isn't it? But on the other hand, what you're saying is it's actually important to try and be open. Obviously, and I think what the important thing there is also acknowledging your feeling things is kind of gives kids permission, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ainsley, is it fair to say you need to ask, if children and young teens have got questions about this, it's important to answer them honestly and to give them information, not to try and think that if you can somehow keep this all away from them. So you do need to answer their questions honestly, but there's a balance about, depending on their age, how much information and how much detail you go into. So for some younger kids, a very simple answer is all they need. So need to be honest, but just need to think about how much information. And I guess that same rule of thumb for us, just be careful about what they're seeing on social media and making sure that you're limiting their exposure, as we should be for ourselves as well, to all of the distressing stories that people might be seeing.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you're right, going over and over is not helpful. Just talking a little bit is. I also think that the other obvious thing is, as an adult caregiver, parent, teacher, is to be clear that you're there to take care of them, so that there's a sense of certainty that that the adults will take care of things.
Yeah, sure. Okay, great.
Sorry, just one last thing, because the other thing is routine for them as well. So as much as possible, and for some whānau at the moment, this will be, their daily routine will be so far from normal, but as much as possible to either keep to your old and usual routines, or if life is very different at the moment, then to try and develop some new routines so that there is some routine to the day that also helps to provide that sense of security as well.
And this is going to be a little bit difficult for some who have been particularly impacted by the floods and by the cyclone, but supporting our tamariki, our rangatahi, to get back into some of those routines might look like going into school or going back to some sports if they can access them. Now for some parents that's going to feel really scary. You know, we've just been in the midst of devastation, and then I'm letting my children go away from me where they're not under my protection. And I guess it's a real balance, because in the midst of such uncertainty we need to find some certainty. And if going to school 5 days a week is something that is certain and is something that's secure, you know that our tamariki, our rangatahi can begin to build their confidence and begin to allow their fear to dissipate with some certainty and something to put their hand on and make sure that, that they know that that's there.
And in communities where schools perhaps haven't reopened or getting to school isn't an option because you're isolated, then it's probably just thinking about what's the routine we can build at home or wherever we're staying at the moment. Is it that we all come together for one meal a day? Is it that we take a little bit of time to play a game, read a book together? You know, so if as Ainsley said, as much as possible, getting back to school and doing your usual routine is really important. But if that's not possible at the moment, think about the little things you can do to just build a little bit of routine into the day.
Yeah, there's a really important principle I think that sits under this, is that for those affected, so much of their life is going to be out of control. That and you can't therefore control that. So focusing on what you can control and working in those spaces, I think, is really, really important. I mean, it kind of is what sits underneath what you're both saying, isn't it?
Okay. And one final theme, David, you've touched on it already, is this notion of survivor's guilt. So we heard a lot, actually, from a lot of readers about this, and I'll sort of combine, for the purposes of time, combine a couple of questions for you. So one reader said, I've not been directly affected by the floods, but I know many have been, and it's distressing to see the impact on so many. This produces a lot of guilt and helplessness.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I can by donating money and supporting friends that are affected, but I still feel guilt and even shame at not doing more. Do you have any advice? And then secondly, one said, a few of my team members live and work in communities that have been hit hard by the flooding and cyclone, but they've not been directly impacted themselves, so their whānau homes and livelihoods are still intact, but they have what they describe as survivor's guilt. Right. What practical ways can we support ourselves and support other people if we ourselves have not been directly affected?
Look, I guess the first practical thing is actually just to do what you can to help, because that is about doing something. Yeah. Beyond that, though, it's just to kind of accept, okay, normal way to feel right now, but on the other hand, I mean, I don't need to feel this way. It's an understandable way to feel, but it's not that I've done anything to cause this, and I'm doing some things to help, and to kind of focus on the kind of positive side of that as well. I don't know what you would say as well.
I was just going to say, in terms of employers, I know that a lot of employers have for their employees access to employee assistance programs. I know, by the way, that those services are somewhat overwhelmed at the moment because which is great, it means there's a lot of access. But I guess it's timely to start reminding our employees, our colleagues about supports that are available to them from their employer. And I guess the thing that I would recommend as an employer to my employees would be just checking in with individuals and even if, saying to an individual person, are you suffering from survivor's guilt, is probably not that helpful. But actually just going, hey, I know that this situation may not have affected you directly and specifically, but this has happened to our community. We all know somebody who's lost a home, potentially lost a whānau member, lost their livelihood, lost connection to schools, to work and so forth. And just being available, I think, is really important at this time, and applying empathy, you know, maybe in the midst of the aftermath of this, as employers we need to recognise that there is a huge amount of latent grief for those who have been significantly impacted by this, but even for those of us that walk around the streets and still see the remnants of distress and of homes devastated and lives impacted and affected. So yeah, as an employer, applying a level of empathy and recognising that grief is here for a period of time.
Because a lot of that grief will be for people not affected, because in a way their whole community has been disrupted, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's going to carry on for some time. So, you know, what we feel as part of our community, it's really important. And when you lose that, then it is going to cause grief. So, yeah.
I also just wanted to say, I feel really heartened to hear that there are so many people that are feeling survivor guilt. It means that we have a community that cares
It's true.
and is feeling hopeless and helpless at times because we want to help, we want to be available, and we just don't know what to do. As David said, yes, you can help. There are ways that you can filter money if that's one way that you can help, through to the organisations that are on the ground supporting people who've been most impacted and affected. But yeah, just coming around even your own colleagues as a part of your community is heartening.
And I think it's great that your readers doing some things now, and they can also remember that, as David said, there's going to be a ripple effect of this for some time. So as we move away from responding to the emergency to recovering from it, there will be all sorts of ways in the coming weeks and months where individuals and employers can provide support and help. So it's important, if you've done some stuff now, that's great, and there'll be further opportunities. And I guess remembering to checking in with people, not just in the first few weeks, but your employers, your family members, to just remember, you know, how are you doing? Is there anything you need? Just remembering that periodically over the next few weeks and months is also a really important thing that you can be doing.
Well, thank you all. That's actually all the time that we've got. But just before we finish up, can we get a quick run through of a bit of a wrap of resources for people? So we've heard 1737, we've heard Youthline. What other places can people find support right now?
allsorts.org.nz, Groove, Groov, Headstrong, local general practice, and for those who have immediate needs, there's a mental health crisis service available in all parts of the country, and all of the mental health services are still operating.
Kia ora. Well, thank you to those of you who have tuned in and have sent through questions. A big thank you to our panellists here today. Be kind to yourselves and take care of yourselves, and have a lovely day. Ka kite.
Kia ora rā.